When we talk about behavioral changes in intimacy within a marriage, it is important to understand that the bond between a husband and wife is not just built on love and trust, but also on consistent emotional and physical connection. One of the most telling signs of a shift in this bond is how a woman behaves when it comes to intimacy. Intimacy is a mirror that reflects the health of a relationship when it begins to change in ways that feel unfamiliar or disconnected. It is often a signal that something deeper is occurring within her emotional world. It is not about jumping to conclusions or assuming the worst, but about observing patterns carefully and understanding the underlying psychology that drives these changes. A sudden avoidance or disinterest in physical closeness is perhaps the most noticeable change. Physical intimacy, for many women, is closely tied to emotional closeness. When she begins to withdraw from affectionate gestures, subtle touches, or even the warmth of daily hugs and kisses, it may indicate a shift in emotional investment. It is not simply about physical desire, it is about how safe and connected she feels in the relationship. When emotional detachment occurs, whether consciously or subconsciously, physical intimacy often becomes strained. For a husband, noticing these changes requires sensitivity and attention. It is not about policing behavior or questioning motives immediately, but observing with awareness and compassion. Altered patterns of affection can manifest in ways that seem inconsistent or confusing. For example, a woman who was once open and expressive may suddenly become cold or indifferent, or she may initiate intimacy sporadically, and without the warmth that once accompanied her gestures, these changes can create a sense of distance that feels unfamiliar and unsettling. In some cases, women may engage in intimacy in ways that feel detached or mechanical, which can be a reflection of emotional conflict, guilt, or distraction. Understanding this behavior requires recognizing that women often process emotions differently than men. Emotional and physical closeness are intertwined, and a shift in one domain can significantly affect the other. It is also essential to consider the role of emotional withdrawal in this behavioral change. When a woman begins to emotionally distance herself, it can appear as if she is losing interest in the marriage itself. She may seem distracted, preoccupied, or less engaged in shared activities that once brought joy and connection. Emotional withdrawal often precedes changes in physical intimacy, and it can serve as an early warning signal that her feelings are being influenced by factors outside the immediate marriage. This is not to suggest that she is automatically unfaithful, but it highlights the need for understanding and addressing underlying emotional needs that may have gone unmet. Another aspect to consider is the subtle shift in responsiveness to her partner's affection. A wife who once responded eagerly to gestures of love may begin to react with hesitation, distraction, or even avoidance. Compliments, thoughtful gestures, or spontaneous acts of kindness may be met with indifference or minimal acknowledgement. These changes are often unconscious, arising from internal conflict or divided attention, and they provide valuable insight into the emotional state of the relationship. Observing these shifts carefully, without accusation or confrontation, allows a partner to approach the situation with empathy and clarity. The psychology behind these behavioral changes is rooted in the human need for emotional alignment and connection. When a woman experiences attention, validation, or emotional stimulation from outside the marriage, even in subtle ways, it can create an internal conflict. She may feel torn between loyalty and newfound excitement, leading to hesitation or withdrawal in her intimate behavior. This does not always result in physical infidelity, but it creates a shift in how she engages emotionally and physically with her husband. Recognizing these signs early can help prevent misunderstandings and create opportunities for meaningful conversations that restore intimacy and trust. It is also worth noting that stress, fatigue, or external pressures can exacerbate these changes. A woman may withdraw from intimacy due to work-related stress, personal challenges, or hormonal fluctuations, which are natural parts of life. The key difference lies in the combination of factors when avoidance of intimacy is accompanied by secrecy, emotional distance, or subtle behavioral inconsistencies. It may point to a deeper issue that warrants attention. The observant husband must learn to differentiate between temporary stress-related withdrawal and patterns that suggest a more significant shift in attachment or interest. Communication plays a crucial role in understanding these changes. Approaching a partner with curiosity rather than accusation can create a safe space for honesty. Asking gentle, open-ended questions about feelings, desires, or changes in mood can reveal insights that may otherwise go unnoticed. Women often respond positively when they sense genuine concern and emotional safety rather than judgment. By combining observation with compassionate dialogue, husbands can address issues before they escalate, fostering connection and emotional alignment that may restore intimacy naturally. Finally, Recognizing that behavioral changes in intimacy are rarely random is critical. Every shift carries a message, whether it is a cry for attention, a need for emotional reassurance, or a reflection of unresolved internal conflict. Observing these signs with patience, empathy, and awareness provides the opportunity to strengthen the marriage, enhance understanding, and rebuild emotional and physical closeness. Ignoring these changes or responding with anger or suspicion can create further distance, while mindful observation and communication can transform a potentially challenging situation into an opportunity for growth and deeper connection. In summary, behavioral changes in intimacy are among the most revealing signs of shifts within a marital relationship. Sudden avoidance, altered patterns of affection, emotional withdrawal, and subtle changes in responsiveness all indicate that a woman's emotional focus may be shifting. Understanding these signs through the lens of psychology, empathy, and compassionate communication allows a husband to approach the situation with clarity and care. It is not about assigning blame or assuming the worst, but about observing patterns, understanding underlying needs, and taking steps to restore trust, connection, and emotional alignment. In marriage, intimacy is not only physical, but also a reflection of the emotional bond. Noticing and addressing these behavioral changes early can strengthen the relationship and foster a deeper, more resilient connection between partners. In today's world, digital devices have become an integral part of daily life, and the way a person interacts with their phone, tablet, or computer can reveal a great deal about their inner state and emotional priorities within a marriage. Unusual secrecy with devices is one of the most common indicators of a shift in trust, attention, or emotional alignment. It is important to approach this observation carefully and without jumping to conclusions, because secrecy can stem from many sources, ranging from personal stress to deliberate attempts to hide something significant. Understanding the psychology behind this behavior can help a husband recognize patterns, interpret signals accurately, and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. When a wife begins to change how she uses her phone or digital devices, it often starts subtly. She may suddenly guard her phone more closely, keeping it on her person at all times or refusing to leave it unattended. Notifications might be silenced, apps hidden, or messages deleted more frequently than before. These behaviors are often subconscious responses to a conflict between her desire for privacy and her need to maintain normalcy within the marriage. From a psychological perspective, the way a person manages digital privacy often reflects their sense of security, guilt, or fear of being observed. In other words, when a woman's device habits change dramatically, it may indicate that she is managing information or emotions that she does not feel ready to share openly. One of the most common manifestations of this secrecy is an increased focus on social media or messaging apps. A wife who was once relaxed about sharing her phone or digital communications may suddenly become defensive if asked to show messages, call logs, or notifications. She might take her phone with her into private spaces, lock it with new passwords, or avoid discussing who she is communicating with. While these changes do not automatically confirm infidelity, they are often a sign that she is protecting information she considers sensitive or private. The psychology behind this is rooted in the human desire to control exposure and maintain a sense of autonomy. When emotional or relational guilt exists, the instinct to shield one's actions intensifies. Another indicator is the alteration of patterns in her digital communication. This could include deleting messages soon after reading, frequently clearing browser history, or using multiple platforms to communicate selectively with certain individuals. Women often do this to compartmentalize parts of their life and create emotional or social distance from situations that could disrupt their sense of stability. In a marital context, this compartmentalization may reflect an internal struggle between loyalty to the relationship and external emotional or social engagement. Observing these patterns carefully is essential because they provide clues about emotional shifts that may otherwise go unnoticed. Emotional responses connected to device secrecy are equally telling. A wife may become defensive, irritable, or anxious when questions about her phone or communications arise. These reactions often reflect a combination of fear of confrontation, guilt, and the natural human instinct to protect privacy. Psychological research suggests that when people feel their personal autonomy is threatened, they may respond with defensiveness or avoidance rather than openness. In a marriage, this can create tension, but it also serves as an important cue that emotional alignment may be shifting. Recognizing the emotional component behind digital secrecy allows a husband to respond with empathy rather than suspicion, creating opportunities for honest dialogue. The frequency and timing of digital interactions can also reveal underlying patterns. Late night phone activity, sudden bursts of messaging, or unexplained periods of unavailability may indicate a shift in attention away from the marital relationship. For many women, Communication with others outside the marriage can provide emotional stimulation, validation, or distraction, which can inadvertently cause distance within the primary relationship. Noticing these changes requires awareness and careful observation, rather than assumptions or accusations. By monitoring patterns over time rather than isolated incidents, a husband can better understand whether these behaviors are part of a temporary adjustment or a longer-term shift in emotional priorities. It is crucial to differentiate between secrecy for personal reasons and secrecy that may suggest relational or emotional concerns. Women, like men, have a natural desire for personal space and privacy, which does not necessarily indicate infidelity. However, when secrecy is accompanied by other behavioral changes, such as withdrawal from intimacy, altered communication, or emotional distance, it becomes a potential signal that warrants attention. The combination of secrecy and these other factors often reflects a deeper psychological dynamic. An internal conflict between desire, guilt, and loyalty. Recognizing this dynamic is key to approaching the situation with understanding rather than judgment. Another important aspect is the role of trust in shaping these behaviors. Trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship, and when a woman senses judgment, criticism, or intrusion, she may instinctively tighten her digital boundaries. In this sense, secrecy can be both a protective measure and a symptom of relational stress. Understanding this duality allows a husband to approach concerns constructively by fostering an environment where emotional honesty feels safe and valued. This approach encourages openness without creating defensiveness, ultimately strengthening the bond between partners. Finally, addressing unusual secrecy with devices requires a balanced combination of observation, reflection, and communication. Observing patterns over time helps identify consistent behavioral changes rather than reacting to isolated incidents. Reflecting on the broader context of the marriage, including emotional connection, communication habits, and daily routines, provides insight into potential triggers for secrecy. And most importantly, approaching the conversation with empathy and curiosity rather than accusation creates space for honesty and resolution. A wife who feels understood rather than judged is more likely to share her thoughts, emotions, and experiences, which can restore intimacy and trust. In conclusion, unusual secrecy with devices is a significant behavioral indicator that can reveal shifts in emotional engagement within a marriage. Sudden changes in phone use, increased privacy, altered messaging habits, defensive reactions, and patterns of communication all provide insight into a woman's inner state. Recognizing these behaviors requires careful observation. Understanding the psychological motivations behind secrecy and approaching the situation with empathy and patience. By doing so, a husband can address potential issues constructively, strengthen emotional alignment, and nurture a deeper sense of trust and intimacy within the relationship. Secrecy, when understood through the lens of psychology and relational dynamics, becomes not just a warning signal, but also an opportunity to connect, communicate, and rebuild closeness in meaningful and lasting ways. Communication is the heartbeat of every relationship. It is through words, tone, gestures, and shared emotions that a couple maintains intimacy, understanding, and trust. When a wife begins to alter her communication patterns, it may seem like a small shift at first, a shorter reply here, an avoided question there. But these small changes often reflect something much deeper. In psychology, communication is not just about the exchange of information, it's about emotional transparency. When transparency starts to fade, emotional distance begins to take root. Recognizing this subtle change can help a husband understand what is truly happening beneath the surface rather than focusing only on the visible symptoms. A sudden decrease in communication is one of the first and most telling signs. A woman who once eagerly shared her thoughts, daily experiences, and emotions may begin to withdraw into silence. She may stop initiating conversations or respond to questions with brief, indifferent answers. This kind of withdrawal can feel confusing and painful to a partner who is used to open and warm exchanges. From a psychological standpoint, such withdrawal often represents emotional fatigue, guilt, or a shift in attachment. When emotional energy is being invested elsewhere, communication within the marriage naturally suffers. The silence is not just about lack of words. It's about the loss of emotional investment in the relationship. In some cases, the communication doesn't disappear completely. It simply changes tone. The wife might start sounding distracted, irritated, or impatient even during casual conversations. Simple questions like, "How was your day?" might be met with dismissive replies, or she may quickly change the subject to avoid deeper discussions. This change in tone can be a defense mechanism. When a person carries emotional secrets or guilt, communication becomes guarded. The mind subconsciously avoids topics that may trigger discomfort or reveal inconsistencies. For example, a wife who is emotionally or physically connected to someone else might feel conflicted when engaging in heartfelt conversations with her husband So she subconsciously avoids them to minimize emotional conflict. Defensiveness is another significant signal. When communication begins to include unnecessary defensiveness or irritation over simple questions, it often indicates that something inside her feels exposed. In psychology, defensiveness arises from fear, the fear of being found out, judged, or confronted. A husband may notice that what once were open, comfortable discussions now turn into arguments or tension-filled exchanges. She may accuse him of being controlling, nosy, or distrustful even when he asks innocent questions. This emotional overreaction is not about the question itself, but about the internal struggle she is facing. The mind projects discomfort outward as a way to protect itself.